All right, welcome to this lesson here where we're going to be taking a look at cosine law, and specifically kind of what cosine law looks like and the reason we have to use cosine law after learning sine law. So as you're looking at this lesson here, I'm going to assume that you have done sine law before, and so you understand what sine law is, and then we're going to build off of sine law and take a look at cosine law. Right now we have this triangle up on the screen here, and we have sides A, B, or sorry, angles A, B, and C, and then it's also going to have sides A, B, and C as well. So what we want to do is we want to solve this missing triangle, okay, or solve for the missing side, okay. So in this case here, we're looking to solve for side AB or BA, whichever one you want to use. So I'm going to label it here. We're looking for side C, as we know side A and B. So we use sine law, or we know what sine law is, and we're going to plug in our values that we have. So A is 8 centimeters, B is 15 centimeters, and angle C is 70 degrees. What you are going to notice about this here is that in each and every one of those ratios, one piece is missing. Okay, we have to know a full ratio. So we have to know the two letters, or at least one grouping of two letters that is the same. For this reason, we cannot use sine law in order to solve for side C, because we don't know what angle A or B is. If we knew what one of them was, we could. But because we don't, we cannot solve for it. And we can't just estimate or guess or try to figure out what it might be. No, we actually have to know what it's going to be for us to solve. So what that means is that we need a new system in order to solve for triangles like this. We can't use sine law. We have to use something else. We're going to use cosine law. Cosine law looks like this. Cosine law involves three sides and a single angle. In this case here, it involves finding or solving for side A using sides B and C and angle A. So you'll notice that on the right-hand side of that equation, we have sides B and C and angle A. Three different letters, okay, that we have, but we're not using, or sorry, but we don't have like a repeat in there. We're trying to find the side that we know the angle and we know the other two sides. Now, you might notice here that we're trying to find side C, and you're like, well, side C is inside of the combination there. We can rearrange this formula as well to solve for B using angle B, or solve for C using angle C. Now, I'm not going to go through the definition of how this equation came about like I did with sine law, but all you can kind of see, or what you'll realize, is that it probably involves Pythagorean theorem and cosine, or the cosine ratio, and yes, it does. It also deals with some other things, and we're just not going to get into it at this time. All right, so let's take a look at how are we going to solve for this triangle. All right, so here's the one we're going to use. We're going to try to solve for side C, so we're going to use the C one. And then that means it's a squared plus b squared minus 2ab. You'll notice that those two letters and the first two letters are the same. And then multiply by cos of c. Now, this is going to become a long equation. It's going to look a little bit like this. If you want to do it in three separate parts, you gladly can. So you could do the 8 squared, you could do the 15 squared, and then you could do 2 times 8 times 15 times cos 70 in one shot. Make sure you do that all in one shot. Don't wait to multiply by cos 70 after you've added and subtracted. It needs to be done like at that end piece there. All that multiplying has to be done together. Now, the other thing you can also do is you can do this all in one shot. Your calculator is completely capable of doing this in one shot. It's just a matter of, do you feel comfortable with it yourself? You can always ask me and we can go through it, just on how that does work. All right, so I'm going to do the calculation, type it all in, punch it all together, hit equals, and we're going to get that c squared is equal to 206.91 centimeters squared. Ew, that's an area, not a length. Yeah, that's right. We need to find the length. You'll notice there that we have sides of 8 and 15, so side C has got to be somewhere in that neighborhood. It can't be super big. And so we have to take the square root, just like Pythagorean theorem. And when we take the square root of c squared and square root of the number, we're going to get a side length of 14.38 centimeters. All right, so that's how we can use cosine law. When we're given two sides and the angle in between those two sides, okay, and that's all we're given, we can use cosine law in order to find the third side. Now, once we have that third side, we can use that third side, in this case C, and angle C, and sine law in order to solve for angles B and A. But we're not going to move to that point yet. We just are looking for that singular side at this point. All right, let's take a look at another example. Now, here is another example where sine law will not work. We have a triangle where we're given all three sides but no angles. So again, if you use sine law, you're going to realize that you'll have one piece of each ratio, but you need a second piece of one of the ratios in order to do any solving. So we have to use cosine law in order to find this. But cosine law is set up to find the side. We want to find the angle. Yeah, right there. And what that means is that we need to get the angle all by itself. You can do this on your own if you want. You can do this with numbers in, but I'm going to go through this right now with you and show you how you can do it without having, giving you kind of an equation that you can use so you don't have to rearrange every single time. All right, let's do the rearranging. First of all, I'm going to subtract b squared and c squared from both sides, and that's going to cancel those ones out, and we're going to be left with this. A squared minus b squared minus c squared is equal to negative 2bc times cos of a. Now, the other thing that we want to get rid of as well is that negative 2bc. It's being multiplied to cos a, so we're going to divide by negative 2bc, and that's going to cancel out there, and we're going to look like this. A squared minus b squared minus c squared over negative 2bc. Be aware that when you are solving this, you have to make sure that you solve the top first, then solve the bottom before you divide. Okay, it's very important. If you punch into your calculator without brackets or without doing that calculation first, it's going to come up with the wrong answer. So just be careful when you do that. Now, we haven't quite got to angle A yet. Because we're trying to find an angle, we have to do the inverse cos of both sides. And so to find angle A, we're going to do cos negative 1 of that grouping there. And I put it into brackets so that it's on its own. How can we use this to solve? Well, let's move that up to the top there. Whew, that looks nice. And let's plug in our values. I already have labeled my triangle with A, B, and C. And we have to be careful that if we want to find angle A, the little a comes first in the equation, and the little b and little c are in there twice. Okay, so you'll always see if we rearrange this formula to solve for angle C, then the little c is going to come in there first, and the a and b are going to be seen twice in the equation. Okay, that order doesn't matter as long as we're subtracting by both of them. Let's plug in the values. We have sides of 3.75, 3.5, and 3. And so you'll notice there the 3.75 is in there once because that's the one associated with side angle A, and the other two are in there twice. I did the calculation, so I calculated the top, calculated the bottom. Now I divide and do the inverse cos of that, and we're going to get an angle of roughly 70 degrees. I would recommend that as you're going through this, you are trying to do these calculations as well, and hopefully you're getting the same answers as I am. If you're not, it might mean that your calculator is not in degrees, or it might mean that you did the calculations in the improper order, or you didn't use brackets where you should have used brackets. So be careful when you're going through there. If you have questions on how to use your calculator, please ask. All right, let's move on to some examples here. I'm just going to move my face over. There we go, so that you can all see me again. All right, let's do this example here. I'd like you to try this example on your own. Label it out. Once you have an answer, restart the video. Okay, so you can pause and restart, and then we'll see how you get your answer. All right, let's solve for this here. We are finding side A, so therefore I'm going to use the a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc times cos of A. And that means that we have to label our triangle properly, and there we go. We have A, B, and C on the triangle. And plug all of our values in. It's so big I had to use 2 lines. Yikes. Should have made it a little smaller. When you punch this in, you're going to get that a squared is equal to 2481 or 2481.53. That is a squared. We need to take the square root of that, and we're going to get an a value of 49.81. I hope that you got that as well. All right, let's try another one. Give this one a shot. Once you have it completed, restart or unpause the video, and then we'll see if you got the right answer. Okay, let's take a look if we got the right answer. Because we're trying to find side C, I've labeled it with angle C there at the 74, and then the A and B are interchangeable, but I did A on top and B on the bottom. If you did it opposite, that's totally fine, as long as you have your sides labeled accordingly, so the A and B would be switched as well. So in this case, because I'm trying to find side C, I'm using the C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared minus 2AB times cos of C function. Plug the values in, do the calculations, and I get C squared. We know that that is not our final answer. We have to take the square root of both sides, and we're going to get a C value of 2.96 inches. Now you'll notice that value is very close to 2.3 and 2.6. This does look somewhat similar in the way that it looks, and so we're pretty sure that we got the right answer in this case. All right, well done on that example. I hope you're able to get the right answer. Let's try an example where we have to find an angle. Solve for angle B. Pause the video, try to solve for the angle, and then restart when you get your answer. All right, let's go through and see if you got the correct answer. Now, I'm trying to find angle B. What that means is that I'm going to use this equation right here, solve for angle B, and you'll notice that little b is the first one, and then A and C are together by themselves. Okay, or they're there twice. Sorry, they're there twice. When we plug this in, now label the triangle. When we plug it in, it's going to look kind of like this. Now, you have to make sure that you do the top piece first, then do the bottom piece, then divide. Okay, the other way to do it is to have brackets on your calculator. Do brackets for the top, divided by brackets on the bottom. Make sure it's a -2, not subtract 2. And then come up with your answer. Do the inverse cos of 0.062. So hopefully you got that as your answer. And you should get an angle of roughly 86 degrees. Okay, it's not quite 90, so this isn't a right angle triangle, but 86 degrees would be our final answer. All right, final example here. Let's try to find what is angle A. Now you'll notice angle A is really big, so it's probably an obtuse angle. I would assume so. Hopefully it is. Okay, so let's solve for it. Pause the video, come up with your answer. Once you have your answer, restart, and then we'll see how you did. Okay, we're going to try to solve for angle A. So first thing we need to do is label our triangle. I'm going to use B and C again, just for the sake of ease. Okay, I'm finding it's probably going to be a little easier. Remember that the A has to be across from A, and then again, B and C have to be across from each other as well. We're going to use the angle A equation. Now again, A is first, and B and C come up twice inside those brackets. Plug the numbers in, do the division. We're going to get a negative decimal, which is totally fine. And when we do the inverse cos of that negative, we're going to get this answer here of 164 degrees. Okay. Now, I hope that worked for you. Okay. I hope you're able to come up with that answer. If you have questions, please ask. I definitely want to go through and help you. I definitely want to give you an opportunity to figure out where the mistakes might be. It might be on your calculator. It might be just in the calculations. Okay. So be careful. Try to follow along in those directions, and hopefully you're coming up with the right answers. Have a great day. Thank you for watching.